I'm looking forward to being back with you again Sunday morning, worshiping with you and continuing our sermon series on relationships, specifically the relationship principles of Jesus. To review very quickly, we have talked about 3 commands in the Bible that Jesus said are the foundational principles to every relationship that we have. The most important relationship that anyone can have is your own individual personal relationship with your God. And the greatest command, Jesus said, is to love Him with all of our heart, soul, strength, and mind. And the principle that we stressed there was this one: the closer that you get to the heartbeat of God, the better all of your relationships are going to be. Jesus then said the second command is like to the first one: love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 hang all the law and the prophets. In what we call the golden rule that Jesus gave near the end of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7, verse 12. He said, "As you would that men should do to you, do you even so to them." Do you remember how that verse concludes? "For this sums up the law and the prophets." Again, all of the laws and all of the prophets can be condensed to those 2 commands. We're to love God and have our vertical relationship in place, and then we love our neighbors, and we talked about who our neighbors really are, and we talked about our responsibility to them. Then Jesus gave His disciples a new command. The command was to love one another, and here's the new part: as I have loved you. The command to love is old, but the command to love as He loves is the new command. So we talked about loving our brothers and sisters. That completes the triangle of love. Our relationship with God comes first. Our relationship with our neighbors then is an integral part of who we are as God's children, and then our relationship with the church. And we talked about what is your dominant life value, and all of it then centers on love. Now, we're going to begin a practical section. We're going to move from the principles, those 3 principles that will enhance every relationship, and today we're going to look at some practical aspects of several attitudes and actions that do serious damage to relationships. And then we're going to look at the qualities of Jesus that should be in each one of our life that will greatly enhance every relationship. We're going to study this morning from Colossians chapter 3. In my estimation, it, along with Romans chapter 12, are the 2 great chapters in the New Testament on Christian living. And in this section, Paul he's actually writing to a church that he's never visited. And there was a heresy he had heard about. That heresy was permeating the church there, and it was de-emphasizing Jesus. Anything that takes Jesus off of His rightful place, both in this world and in our hearts and life, is fallacy. It's false, and it's not helpful to the cause of Christ nor to our life. These people in Colossae were basically saying that you needed to have Jesus and this special spiritual enlightenment that they had that basically puffed them up. And one of the definitions of love in 1 Corinthians 13 is that love is not puffed up. But these people were snobbish and arrogant and looked down their nose at other people who didn't have this special enlightenment that they felt that you needed in order to be really spiritual. So Paul addresses that in the first 2 chapters. And then when he comes to chapter 3, he begins with therefore, or since then. Since you've been risen with Christ, since you've been buried with Him, Colossians 2:12 says, and you're a Christian since then now, you have an entirely different mindset and heart. He says then to set your affections, your heart's affections, on things above, not on things of the earth. It gets back to that principle again. We love God with all our heart, soul, strength, and mind. And then he gives a list of, two lists actually, of sinful behaviors, actions, and attitudes that are that do serious damage to our relationships. And these, he said, have to be put off. The first list of 5 involve 4 sexual immorality type situations. And you and I both know that when we get involved in immorality in terms of a sexual relationship or pornography or any of the things that he mentions, lust, in that list, that it does serious damage to our relationship to God and our relationship to the people that we love. The 5th one is greed, which he said is idolatry, and we talked about recently an idol. What an idol is anything that we put before God and hinders our relationship with God. Paul said, you put all those to death. And then he gives a list of 5 or 6 actions and attitudes that would also do serious damage to relationships. And he says there's anger, and there's malice, and there's slander. And then he talks about lying. And we put all of those things away. The bottom line principle of that is this. Most relationships are built on trust. And when trust is broken, it's not that it can't be rebuilt. It just takes a long time for a person to come to prove themselves to the person who they've broken that trust with. Now, once those are dealt with, or once we work on those and get those sinful actions and attitudes out of our life, and we build a relationship with somebody, our spouse, our children, our family, our loved ones, the church, the world, that's based upon love and trust, then Paul says there are 6 or 7 qualities that are Christ-like that we are to put on. And those are the ones that we're going to stress on Sunday morning. I'd like to read them for you so that you can then use them as a springboard to discuss in your life group how your life group can help you to be this way, this Christ-like. What he says here in this passage is this: therefore, as God's children, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourself with compassion, with kindness, with humility, with gentleness, and patience. Bear with one another, and whatever grievances you have, you forgive, because the Lord forgave you. And above everything else, he comes back to it, you put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. We're going to talk about those 5, 6, 7 qualities there in our Sunday morning lesson. And then we're going to put them into 3 principles that we'd like for you to discuss in your life group tonight. If you want to greatly enhance any relationship that you have, we're going to say you always take the high road. I'm going to ask you to discuss whether you agree with that or not, and what exactly that means, and how you believe that will help your relationships. Secondly, we're going to talk about the fact that actions are more important than feelings. Our feelings are important, and what we feel about someone or about what someone's done. But what's more important than how we feel is how we act and react, and that's the key. And Paul is challenging these Christians here to act Christ-like as they deal with some difficult people here who really are stirring up things within the church. And then above everything else, he says, you put on love. I don't find it real difficult to love. It's difficult, however, to forgive. And that's the quality that sets up the last one. So what we want your life group to do tonight is to talk about the qualities of Jesus that are in chapter 1, and then how we can begin to set our mind on those kind of things. And then talk about these attitudes and actions that hinder relationships, and how we can put those apart and help each other then, hold each other accountable to living like Christ. And then finally, then how we want you to talk about how we can help each other then to have these Christ-like qualities that are greatly going to enhance not only our spiritual life, but every relationship that we have. May God bless you as you continue to get closer to each other, as you go deeper into the Word. And may God bless all of our relationships.